Welcome to the next episode of the CAPB Podcast. I am delighted to welcome Sally Orange, formerly of the Royal Army Medical Corps, to the podcast. Welcome, Sally.
Hi, Matt. Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Yeah,
Very
we're
well,
not.
thank you very much, yeah.
We're not too bad. Now, this is a bit of a step change in the podcast because we are having a couple of focused episodes where we look at inspirational veterans. And Sally, there isn't many more inspirational than you. You are, after serving in the Royal Army Medical Corps for over 21 years, you are now a force of nature when it comes to raising awareness and raising money for mental health charities. And that's incredible. So welcome to the CAPB Podcast, and thank you for giving up your time to come on.
Oh, no, thank you. And thank you. Yeah, very kind. I never think what I'm doing is particularly, it's just a bit different, I guess. But I'm glad that people do take inspiration from it.
It's huge. Yeah. It's huge.
So let's before we get into the absolutely amazing stuff that you do now, I want to kind of take you 22, well, just under 22 years in the army. What was the highlight, would you say, of your career?
Yeah, I think I would probably say my tour of Afghanistan was the highlight. I was very fortunate. I basically served on FTRS for 8 years at Chilwell, which I know some people won't have particularly fond memories of, and also as a reservist. But yeah, sort of going out and using the skills that I'd learnt sort of in physio and rehab, actually out in Camp Bastion, and the advances in medical technology that I saw, I think were my highlight. As I was very lucky with adventure training, I got to do, see lots of places and go lots of places. But alongside the people, the highlight would be actually the operational tour.
What tour was that?
Herrick 13 in 2011.
So I took over you. I was on Herrick 14.
Ah, right, yeah.
I came on Herrick 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things, Sally, when we speak to veterans, like Paul and I, I'd say Paul and I have served between us. We've served over 35 years, and we've deployed Iraq, Afghanistan, all over. And there was one tour in Iraq actually where we were both in theatre at the same time, which must have been great for Mum. But when we talk about people and we talk about highlights, it's strange because a lot of the people who come on the podcast, a lot of the veterans say, yeah, it's the op tours. And arguably the op tours are the most difficult, the most challenging, the most arduous, the worst memories, but it's something that people always look upon fondly,
Yeah, I think it's that the purpose. It's a sort of culmination of everything you've trained for to actually put it into practice. And I suppose, in my profession, that's a bit strange because we were sort of putting it into practice every single day, but it was at a time when people needed it most. It really was at the sharp end of it. And some of the things that we were doing were life-saving. Even as a physiotherapist, you might think, well, you've got knees, backs, shoulders, but we would go on to intensive care every morning in the field hospital and, treat the patients who were then going to be casevaced back to Birmingham when they were stable enough to do so. And I just think there's so many different reasons or things that other people don't understand about others' professions that, is a mindful for everybody really.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think another thing, from a physio point of view, it's not just what you were doing in theatre, it's what you're doing in the UK, getting people back on the road, either back to recovery just to normalise life after their injuries or getting them turned around so they can come back into theatre.
Yeah,
it isn't, because I'm a CMT and I've deployed, I've worked in a hospital in Bastion as well. And I think it's one of those things where people who deploy to Afghanistan, there is a huge network of people who deployed to Afghanistan. It isn't just those who are kicking the doors in, and it has an impact on all of us. So, thank you for saying about Afghanistan, and that's been your highlight. I think it's ace. When did you leave, Sally?
I was medically discharged in 2019. So yes, stayed in for quite a while, and I would still be in now if I hadn't have been medically discharged, because it was my life, and as a reservist as well as full time, it was my weekends, and it was my Tuesday evenings. It was what I chose to do. And then even when I wasn't FGRS, I was working as a civilian for the MOD, locuming. So I'd still have a rank in the background, but on that day I would be Sally, and that was really nice. It was really nice to not have a rank, and it was really interesting how patients treated you differently, whether or not you were in uniform or not. And that was something I got to see and experience, which was quite fun.
Thank you, Sally. And we've had a couple of people on the podcast who have served in the reserves, and I just take another opportunity to say that the commitment the reserves put into the military is phenomenal. To run a full-time job, as well as commitment to the evenings, as well as commitment to the weekends, as well as deploying. And I know, as you know, Sally, in the Med Corps, we couldn't really function without the support of the reservists. So this is just a huge shout out to reservists. When did the challenges start, Sally? You've done so many challenges. You are, as I said at the beginning, you're a real champion for raising awareness and money for so many charities. When did that start?
So my very first marathon was in 2007. And I then, when my second marathon, 2009, then my third was actually in Afghanistan. But I remember being 8 years old and seeing the London Marathon and thinking, wow, that looks amazing. I want to do that one day. It just took until I was actually 34 till I plucked up the courage to do it, because I just thought, I'm not good enough. I won't be able to do that. I won't be able to raise the money or run that kind of distance. And I actually remember my first ever half marathon, and it was one where there was a full marathon going on at the same time. And I remember as I peeled off for the half, just thinking, thank goodness, why on earth would anyone ever want to run a full marathon? I just couldn't understand it. And so I suppose once I'd done the half, I then thought, well, maybe I could try a full, and still thought never again. But I think it was the realisation that I could use it in quite a fun way to help raise awareness. And so my little claim to fame is that I am the only person in the world that's ran a marathon on every continent dressed as a different piece of fruit. And people... it makes people smile. I don't mind telling people. I don't feel like I'm being a big head saying, oh, I've done this, because it genuinely makes people smile. And then they ask the question, why? Why do you run around the world dressed as pieces of fruit? And I'm able to say to people that I want to change that conversation and break the stigma associated with poor mental health. And it just starts that question. And if they're not happy talking about it, then they can talk about the costume. But more often than not, people will say, I've had a problem, I know someone who's had a problem, and it just normalises and opens up the conversation. And it's taken me literally all around the world, and got the message across to different ways to different cohorts of people. And that's where it started. And I kind of realised after that I'd do a marathon in the London Eye during the pandemic to look at the raising the highs and lows, or the ups and downs that the pandemic was having on the nation's mental health. So I got a treadmill.
How did that work?
I got a treadmill into a pod in the London Eye. If you remember, we were all in bubbles. Yeah. So I likened it to us all being in bubbles, and we were moving forward, but we kind of felt like we were going around in circles. I could only see other people through a screen. So it really kind of depicted the whole situation. And unfortunately, the London Marathon wouldn't count it because it was on a treadmill. Obviously, I was dressed as an orange, but I knew this just beforehand, and not to be, not to sort of be downhearted by it. I thought, well, that's fine. So I stepped off, went back to my hotel as soon as I'd finished, got changed, put on a lemon costume straight away, ran another marathon straight after around the streets of London, past the bells of St Clement's. So I was oranges and lemons past the bells of St Clement's. And finally finished that marathon. So it took me a double one to get the medal that year. And then 6 days later, it was World Mental Health Day. And I'd been working with a team in a mine up in North Yorkshire. And we did the world's deepest underground marathon in this mine. and that we called it beneath the surface, because you never know what's going on beneath the surface in other people's minds. And yeah, it was just a great way as well of just sort of being able to show. And actually, I'm very fortunate to be one of the national ambassadors for the Army Cadet Force. And while we were underground running, there were 7 of us. On the surface, we'd got Army cadets to equally try and sort of get a Guinness World Record for the most online users to do a mental health awareness training program. So it was great to know that when we were underneath running, we did actually get the Guinness World Record for the world's steepest underground marathon. We came back up and we found that thousands and thousands of cadets had logged on online, learnt more about mental health, and got their own Guinness World Record. So for 12 to 18-year-olds to get themselves in the Guinness Book of Records, but more so for me, it was getting the mental health awareness message out there into that Guinness Book of Records.
Sally, that is phenomenal. Like, not only to have the physical strength. Paul and I both run. Paul and I both run ultramarathons. We like to try and look after ourselves. We're not very good at it, but we try our best. We try and set ourselves events.
Rather than run.
An example of the mental resilience that you're showing, I link it to what Paul says, and I'll give Paul a bit of a chuck up. Paul was diagnosed with cancer on a Thursday evening. Paul ran an ultramarathon on the Saturday, while all of us, his family, were in like bits. Oh God! Paul was like, I've still got this ultra to do on Saturday," and he ran an ultramarathon down Offers Dyke Path. And I think having that type of, I don't think I could have done that. And like you running a marathon, I've run some marathons. I don't think I could run one in a bubble. I don't think I could run one on a treadmill even, and I definitely couldn't do one and then just a few hours later go again. I think it's just phenomenal, Sally.
Oh, well, thank you. But I get it, Paul, and I can understand, first of all, congratulations and well done for doing that. But I think sometimes, and, I'm completely assuming here, sometimes it can be when you're running that you can give yourself that time. You can it's a distraction sometimes, 100%. And, you can take yourself away from stuff, or equally, you can use it as a focus time to go, right, this is when I'm going to think about this one thing, and I'm not going to let it take over everything else. So, and I truly believe that anyone, if they want to, could run a marathon. And the reason I say that is, if, as you say, Paul, is your brother, if he was in trouble and he's 26.2 miles away and there's no train, plane, bike, bus, no other way of getting to him rather than on foot, would you get to him?
I absolutely. I mean, I would take my time. No, I wouldn't. I'd get there as quickly.
And that's the thing. You wouldn't get there at the same time as perhaps your mum, or but you would find a way of getting. We only need to look at Ukraine when that's first started happening. People were sort of fleeing to the borders, and pushchairs were being left at the borders. That if your drive and your desire and your want is strong enough, then you'll find a way of getting there. Doesn't mean that we'll all get there at the same time, but you can get there.
I think that for me, one of the things that fascinates me is what the human body's capable of.
Yeah.
There's a guy, ex-Marine, Jonathan Payne, I think his name is. He's recently, literally this morning, I think, finished running a vertical marathon. So he ran up and down Ben Nevis 2 or 3 times a day because he had to achieve 42,000 meters in elevation.
Oh, yeah.
So he literally parked the van bottom of Ben Nevis and ran up and down it for 15 days until he'd ran 42,000 feet and 42,000 meters. And I think that type of like mental resilience, to keep going is just, it just astounds me. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, that is incredible that he's doing that.
Sally, of all of your challenges, because it's not just the running.
Nope.
You've swam the Channel. I saw recently on your social media you swam. Is it like from one continent to another?
Yeah, so I swam from Asia to Europe and then Europe to Asia. And earlier this year for my 50th, I swam from Nevis to St. Kitts, so two islands as well. But again, one of my one of the best sort of swimming challenges, I used it as a story and as a narrative, and that was the Escape from Alcatraz triathlon. So Alcatraz is obviously a prison, and it started by swimming in the treacherous cold waters of Alcatraz to the shore. And I thought, I want to make the invisible illness visible. So while everyone else is in black wetsuits, I had a black wetsuit plus a convict outfit on top. So you know when you learn to swim in your pajamas? I don't know if you do. I learned to swim in
Yeah,
pajamas for
100%.
some reason, and that's it came in useful on that time. But as we jumped in off the boat, I couldn't, on the video, everybody's looking the same, and then you can suddenly see me jump in, and I swim. And it was freezing cold, and the current was really strong. And I remember getting to one point and just fighting. And I'm swimming in, I'm just thinking I'm not getting anywhere. And it suddenly reminded me that that's exactly how I felt with my mental health, that I was kind of pushing against everything. And I just needed to go with the flow. And I suddenly allowed myself to go with the flow. And I got to the riverbank, I got to the side. Now, that wasn't exactly where I wanted to be, but I was safe. And that's where I've been with my mental health in the past, under the crisis team. I wasn't where I wanted to be, but I was safe. Got myself to the transition, got on the bike, up and down the streets of San Francisco. It's the highs and lows of mental illness. And then I was suddenly on the run, and I ran past the Golden Gate Bridge, and it dawned on me that the bridge is the friends, the family, the clinicians that can help you escape from Alcatraz by bridging that gap. And Alcatraz being a prison, that's like mental illness. It's the shame, the guilt, the fear, all those things that you feel. It was just a way of sort of making a narrative that meant I didn't have to be the fastest, but there was a story and a reason as to why I was doing it that got me through. And that was just another different way of doing it.
The story element's phenomenal, Sally. It's such you can really relate to that kind of, and I think that the awareness of mental health is getting much better than it was, much better than it was. And certainly for men's mental health, a lot of people don't make it through the challenges of mental health and unfortunately succumb to their demons. And I think the more we can raise awareness with stories, with challenges, with talking to people and breaking the stigma, I think,
and that's exactly what I very much say to people. You wouldn't learn to swim in a storm. So why do we leave it until it's too late, until we get help? We know if we had any other problem that we would get help as soon as possible. And then you can learn to manage and sort of, use the tools and techniques that will help you, that you're not suddenly learning those techniques when you really aren't very well. And it's sort of, past that, Paul, with your bowel cancer, you went and got it sorted. And, if you'd have left it, unfortunately, you would have had, possibly a different outcome.
And this is the thing. So people ask me about it and I go, do you know, 2-3 years ago, I would have never gone to the doctors. And I was 80-20%. So 80%, I was going to cancel my colonoscopy, which is what happened on the Thursday evening, because I didn't want, because I was so focused on this ultra. And I was like, I don't want to have anything happen in that area whilst I'm like moving forward. I don't want to be like in the hurt locker from that. So speaking to friends, they were like, nah, it's all right. Like literally 12 hours later, you're sorted. I'm like, cool. So I went to have it expecting, don't worry about it, it's nothing. To then getting that news, to then coming home. And it was actually my wife said to me, you're running the race. Like you have to do it. I mean, take that time away from us to go and like figure out it in yourself. And I never thought about it once during the ultra because I was just so focused on starting, getting my legs moving. And then I did have, conversations. One of my best mates ran it with me, which was great. He'd never run more than 8 miles before. And he ended up doing 30 with me. So he was going to do one leg, but he ended up just carrying on. And I think we finished in Crocs, the pair of us. It was just like, I was so...
And you've inspired him, and he's achieved something that he didn't think was possible.
100%. And I think that throughout the whole, everything that's running has definitely helped, and fitness has definitely helped, and having a conduit to kind of, like you say, almost sort of forget the life that's happening at the moment and go out and just sort of been able to process it a little bit better. And I definitely did that. I mean, I've done that for the last 4 or 5 months. But yeah,
I think
it's
the
not
other thing
me,
about
it's about everything else,
running
so.
or walking. I mean, if you're able to run and talk at the same time, that's great. At my pace, is it's not as easy. Well, I have to be walking to be able to do that. But the great thing is you haven't got eye contact, so you talk about things that because you talk about all kinds of things, and I think for men in particular, I found that with cycling, as well, you're having to look and concentrate on the road, so you're not looking into each other's eyes. Whereas, when you go for therapy, it is a case of I need to look into into your eyes, and perhaps you don't want to say some of the same things or look at the different reactions of people. So yeah, I just think movement. There's so many different, so many great things to it, and the benefits to it. And as you say, either distraction or focus can work both ways.
I love running, but I love running more now I'm out. So when I was serving, I played a lot of football, and then when I left, I didn't really do anything for about 18 months, and played football once a week, and I put loads of weight on, and I just started feeling miserable, and I started feeling a bit down about stuff, and I thought it was just, I'm missing the military, and I wasn't. It was more the fact that I was becoming unfit. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have like a focus. And so I started running. I'm not what we call intrinsically motivated. So I can't just get up and go, I'm going to go and run
No,
today because it's important. I have to book events. So since then, I book 6 or 7 events a year. Paul and I try and tie up. So we run one together. And then we just, all different distances, 5K, 10K, an ultra, a marathon, half marathons, just to give me something every couple of months to go, great, I've got that half in a couple of months, and I'm going to go do that, and it's going to be good fun. And it's literally, it's definitely changed me. I feel more relaxed. As I'm getting older, I feel more relaxed. I feel like I feel more comfortable in doing stuff, even though you're turned up on the start line with all these people you don't know, because you're all doing the same thing. It's just something that brings people together. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, that you'll help people if you're struggling, and other people will help you if you're struggling, but you'll help them if they're struggling. And for me, I always say that I'm not bothered about the time that I get. For me, it's more about having the time of my life, because if I put a time of saying, like with a marathon, I want to do 4 hours, and if I get 4:02, well, I already feel a failure. That's just inbuilt in my life. If I miss that, then I've got evidence that I'm a failure. So actually, I turn it around and try and make it so I'm in charge of having a good time. I can choose if I smile at people who are running by, or if I say good luck to them, or supporters, wave to them, and tap their hands, and I'm in control of that. Whereas it might be the weather or something that has control of the situation, and I've got no control over that. If somebody, if I trip or if I fall. So again, it just helps that I don't need to put an extra stressor on myself.
So I don't
Amazing.
call them races, me. I call them events.
I'm exactly the same.
I'm going to enjoy this event, and like what I found definitely is that my body, physical body, is capable of much more than what I actually think it is. And then also my mental resiliency when going through that, and I'm sure we can all liken it to the same, when we're going through that, why the hell am I doing this now? Like, my legs are burning, my lungs are like,
I'm paying
off
for
at
it.
mile such and such. And we have that
mental... and you paid for the pleasure of it.
I paid for it. That's the thing. I paid for the pleasure. It's like, that's what I get from doing these. So I don't like half marathons. I don't like marathons because there's a end point to it. Yeah. So I like 24-hour races or something like that. Something that I know I've got to run for 24 hours or move for 24 hours. And there's no distance, because the distance is in completely, like you say, in my hands. It's like I can either walk at this point or run at this point. I don't have to get to the point. So that's what I like to be able to do that, and I think it definitely helps mentally for me. My mental health. It's as with everyone, has its ups and downs, and I think fitness is a really good outlet to be able to do that. And although I can't I suppose I could dress as a tree, being the surname is Spruce, but trying to run as a tree,
Yeah.
Could be, mate.
I don't know. Maybe we branch out. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I see what you did
dear.
there.
Oh,
See what
dear.
you did. I don't want to squash that idea straight away.
Oh no, I can't. Please stop, for the love of God, Sally. I appreciate that you are a very busy lady. I've got just a couple of points, or a couple of questions, should I say? You served for like over 20 years in the military. Has any of that, does any of that help you with these challenges? Because some of them are, you've done Marathon de Sable. You've it's like the Americas. You've done across the huge snow plateaus and stuff. It's like, that's not just physical endurance. That is, that's something else. And as your military career, can you relate anything to that?
If I think back to the Marathon de Sable, I remember telling my CO that I was going to be doing the MDS, and I remember him telling me, well, I know Marines who've not been able to pass that or to finish that, and I was sort of like, oh, great, that didn't fill me with confidence, and I was really upset by it. But in actual fact, that possibly spurred me on to think, well, you think that I can't do that, or you gave me no sort of incentive or encouragement. So yeah, when I came back and said I'd completed it, I didn't get a congratulations, but I think it taught me to deal with, that's other people's problems, and that's their issues. I know that's the theory, but putting the theory into practice, I'm still working on. I still take medication. I still see a therapist, because although, as I say, that not learning to swim in a storm, I'm still learning to swim. And sometimes, to help my technique get better, I need to have that help to kind of get me back on track sometimes. But yeah, it's other people that perhaps are putting the doubt in your mind rather than yourself, because yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't try and encourage someone rather than, dishearten them. I know there's elements of safety and there is risk, and but yeah, actually, if you prepare yourself, then you can achieve more than you think you can.
I think we've all met those type of people, and it's almost like it's a failing in their leadership, and it's highlighting their insecurities. You know what I mean? It's just the way I see it. In leadership is our job certainly in the military as leader is to create a platform to allow our people to achieve their best. It's what I do now for work as an agile coach. It's about creating an environment for people to do better. So in no way comes into that where I go, well, you ain't going to be able to do that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, as you said, there's coaching, and there's ways that, there's ways of teasing it out to someone. If somebody's already got doubts in their mind, which I very much had doubts in my mind, I didn't do any training on sand because I was scared of sand, which, yeah, given it was going to be sort of 6 days on sand, was probably not the best. But yeah, just actually make it positive, and how can we help you with that? I had a great, I now sort of do motivational, inspirational speaking, and I spoke at an event recently, and I had an email from the person that booked me to speak at that event, and she's just signed up to her first half marathon in 5 months' time. And honestly, the pleasure that I got when I got that email. And so I've said to her, look, I'm not a coach, but do you want me to be accountable? Do you want to be accountable to me? Every week I'll send you a text asking how it's gone, how your week's training's gone. There's no judgment, it doesn't matter to me if you've made it or if you've not. But if you know that someone's going to check in on you each week, then you're more than likely to do it and not want to have to make the excuses. So yeah, I've said, look, I want to support you on this because I feel invested in her journey, and I just feel really proud that she's gone, do you know what? Maybe I can give this a go. And yeah, that's what gives me pride in helping other people achieve their goals.
It's selfless,
amazing, Sally. So obviously you've coming to the end of the podcast now, and it's a kind of a moment where we ask, so looking about what you've done, like a lot of people wouldn't be able to do that in their own lifetime. But however, what is next? What is the next big thing for Sally Orange?
Well, I've got next, as in tomorrow, where I'm actually flying off to Morocco to do a 110k ultra run. Or I've got next, as in I've now set myself a project of having run every continent dressed as a piece of fruit. I'm now going to do every continent as a vegetable, because kids love it. It's really fun to be able to sort of talk to them. I take my costumes into schools, and they can go home saying, mummy, I was dressed as a strawberry today, or dressed as a carrot, and it just keeps that conversation going. But that was also a bit of a saviour and a bit of a sort of safety net for me. So last year I took on 7 marathons, 7 continents, 7 consecutive days. And I was concerned, that was to take the mental health message around the world. And I was concerned that if I didn't manage that, I would feel a failure. So I put this buffer in that if I did my first marathon in Antarctica, which is the hardest to get to, the most expensive to get to, if I did that as a pod of peas, because I knew I was going to be frozen, then I've at least, if I didn't manage anything more, I've at least sort of started on this new project and achieved that. So it was sort of, two reasons why I did that. And everybody else in the marathon in Antarctica, they'd all got their buffs up to here, they'd got their ski goggles on, their hats on. The only way you could recognise people was through their number. Now, I'd got this great big pod of peas running around, so I'd get people waving to me, and they, then ask you, why were you dressed as a pod of peas? Wow. So unfortunately, I was supposed to do Greenland 2 weekends ago, but I've had a stress fracture in my foot, so I had to be sensible, and I was going to do that as a carrot. But there's, I think it is important to look after yourself. And I knew that I was injured, and so as heartbreaking as it was to have to say no, and having not done much training, well, no training for the one in Morocco, I'm just, seeing how far I can get with my mind on this one. But again, if my foot starts to play up or be cause any problems, because I've got things coming, I don't want to ruin it for them. So I'll do what I can. I haven't got an ego to say I must do that. I've done more than that before, so it's just the power of doing it with other people and raising money for charity that I'm doing it for on that occasion.
Can I just say, Sally, that this has been, I've got a smile on my face just from listening to how you give back selflessly to what is a massive problem worldwide, and how you do it is it makes me giggle. I'm laughing just thinking of you running around like a bunch of bloody frozen peas. It's
Yes.
I'll echo what Paul says, Sally, and I'll say that I've never ever. And I served for 23 years in the med corps, so I understand mental health, working with mental health practitioners and the like. I've never heard anyone articulate and normalise the conversation of mental health the way you have in the last half an hour. Yeah. Talking about like being in the bubble and looking outside, talking about your event from Alcatraz. It just really it just inspires you to want to do more. It inspires me to want to, pick up the phone and just text somebody. Because it isn't just, we need to talk about mental health. We need to talk about mental health and keep saying the same thing. It's about, if you're trapped, then you need to do this. Or if you need to, if you're not seen, then maybe you should do something to be seen. I think it's totally inspiring. The conversation's been brilliant. I can't believe it's nearly over, to be honest. I've really enjoyed it, Sally.
Oh, thank you. It's been, and thank you for sharing what you have as well. With the challenges that you face with, you Paul with bowel cancer, and you, Matt, having to be, a brother of someone with, going through difficult things. So let's hope that we can just help somebody reach out and go, it's okay. Whether that's to go and get a PSA test for prostate cancer, or colonoscopy for bowel cancer, or to go and speak to a mate or their GP with their mental health, because they all wrap into one. That's the problem.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sally. It's been amazing, and good luck in Morocco.
Thank you very much.
And I cannot wait to continue to track your amazing challenges dressed as fruit, veg, all kinds of stuff. It's inspired me to want to do the next challenge dressed as summit and maybe raise some money.
We'll have to have a little think. We could do something
Thank you
together.
so much, Sally.
Okay, thanks both. Bye. Bye.